NIA fam, as promised, 2 episodes this week. A couple days ago, right before the NBA Finals on Wednesday, we dropped an episode with 2 of the largest YouTube basketball channels in the world, Coach Nick from B-Ball Breakdown and Coach Colin from Shot Mechanics. We learned about their journey being YouTube creator for the past decade, the business of the NBA, the YouTube business, and a lot about Steph Curry. If you appreciate genius, watch us and listen to them break down Steph Curry's genius. Today, me and Bilal are grilling Jack Butcher about visualized value. There was a new drop. Super interesting story behind the new visualized value drop, and also a lot about our personal journeys as quote-unquote creators, the obstacles and anxieties that we felt, but also why we chose to make the jump into the quote-unquote creator life. And as always, there will be jokes. We appreciate you, listeners.
All right, welcome, and we're back again. We got the NIA boys here today. Trung Phan, me, Master Flex himself, Bloomberg contributor, Bloomberg opinion contributor, as I learned.
I had a couple of friends reach out that said they were in stitches when Jack went shaper of public opinion.
Yeah.
So for the listeners or viewers that didn't see last episode, I was just obviously joking, but not really. No,
you gotta let them know.
Bilal's hit me on the intros. I'm like, Bilal, don't forget the
brand.
Opinion
I'm still using Meme Master Flex from a year ago, which was a one-liner you said. So,
then Jack goes with the shaper of public opinion.
But that's incredible. Lowercase J journalist, and then we've got our boy Jack Butcher, as we were talking about him, founder of Visualized Value. We're going to be doing a Jack Butcher heavy episode in a minute because we're going to be talking all about building versus betting. And as always, I'm Bilal Zaidi as well. All right, so we asked in our Telegram group, we asked people listening like what they wanted us to talk about. And one of the things that came up, our boy Chief wrote a massive long message, but I'm going to try to pull out the most important parts. So the theme of it, he said, guys, can you talk more about building versus betting? Jack started the discussion a few weeks ago, especially within the context of the bear market. He had a cool follow-up of tweets about it too. But the fact is, all 3 of you have built interesting projects, etc., etc. Would love to hear you chat about the mistakes you've made, the lessons you've learned while working on those things. And so there's some more stuff in there. But just to kick it off, Jack, this is a great week to do it because you have been heads down building as always. And you launched this thing called the Archive with a double V. So Archive, like Visualized Value E. Was it number 3 on Product Hunt?
Yeah, I think so. Around there. I think we've tailed off now, but we're
only talking all-time highs here. So
we got above the fold. We got above the fold, boys.
So hold on a second. What is the project?
Yeah.
So, let me do a little context setting. So one of the Visualized Value training products is called Permissionless Apprentice. And I think I made it probably about a year ago now, but it was supposed to be the entry-level curriculum. So we have how to visualize value, build once, sell twice, and then Permissionless Apprentice is designed to be the on-ramp for the rest of the curriculums, essentially. But it's, if I was to encapsulate the lessons that it's trying to convey, it's like, don't ask for permission, like go out and do something, make something. And the nature of the internet is such that you can kind of answer or solve a problem for somebody without asking them to do it, and then present the solution to them and kind of use their distribution to get your name out there, show the thing that you build some proof of work, build a portfolio, invite more opportunity into your life, right? That's the function of it. So that curriculum, I made it free. Like, I think when we really started to see the market go carnage mode 3-4 weeks ago, made it free, said, hey, just download it, jump in it, get your brain right and start building some stuff, experiment. And got probably 500-600 downloads a day for the next few days.
Wow,
that's serious, dude.
That's big. For people who don't realize, that's like a lot of people, even with a few 100,000 followers like you got.
And this is only from Twitter?
Just Twitter. Yeah, I sent an email. As well. My email list is pretty small, but yeah, a few hundred a day, 1,000, I think, on the first day, and then it kind of tailed off a little bit. And that was all good, got some great feedback, but then I started to look at the data, and it's like half of those people never even opened the thing, right? It's free, so you download it and then you forget about it. So last week I was like, okay, I'll make a little tweak to it. I'll make it $1. So you have to get your credit card out and actually like express some level of intent, put a tiny bit of skin in the game. It's obviously not about making the dollar. It's about the action you need to take to commit to the thing. And since then, like the completion rate is up 5-6x at least. People buy it and then they open it.
We need to talk about the psychology of this, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to say, this sounds like Costco level psychology on the pricing.
We're going to allow Jack to finish, but fun fact fan, his brain's tingling right now.
Yeah, this stuff, I don't know the theory behind it, but I just have the
Jack, let me give you the theory.
Hit me.
So, well, everybody here has probably read Robert Cialdini's book Influence, right? Cialdini. Mm-hmm. It's called the Bible for influence and persuasion, right? So what are the tools that individuals use to persuade? Obviously, there's like reciprocity, which you're also doing, right? The first thing you did was reciprocity, which is like Costco giving out free samples. So if you go eat not a hot dog, but one of the small sausages that they give away at Costco, you're like, oh, they gave me something. I feel compelled to give it back. It's an evolutionary thing. You grew up in small tribes. Reciprocity is what kept that tribe alive, right? So they have all these. I think there's 7 of them. Like authority is another one where you can be an authority figure where you persuade somebody. But Jack's thing, and you already said it, it's commitment. And the example that Robert Cialdini uses in the book Influence is quite dark, but it's very effective. He was talking about the POWs, the prisoners of war, for the Chinese and Vietnamese communists. So American POWs. And what their captors did was they had the POWs write down, basically every day, write something down, small, which was negative to the United States of America. Something along the lines of, we shouldn't be in country X, we shouldn't be in country Y for these reasons. Every day, just a small thing. But that creates the commitment and also the consistency, because the personal ego, right? Your ego wants you to be an individual that's trustworthy and continues with the actions that you first start doing. So the $1 is a consistency element, right? It's like you want to be the person that can commit yourself to something, but also see it through to the end. So that was amazing, dude. I could not believe they should be using that as a case study. The visualized value right there.
Yeah, and Jack, have you seen a difference? I mean, I know you've only put it up to $1 recently, though, right? So I'm curious if you've seen more people actually open it and that follow through.
Definitely, the completion rate of the course is up 5-6x. Like the analytics are incredible, but like anecdotally, like the amount of people that reach out afterwards and got through it is significant too. I think it's kind of, you just cross a psychological barrier where it's like, I'm actually going to do this versus I'll get to it. Right, like it's kind of like putting your running shoes on. Have you ever heard that one before? Whereas
leave the shoes ready with the socks. Right. Just put them on.
Exactly. It's a very similar principle. I think I had another anecdotal one. A friend of mine had a gym accountability buddy, and is like, he texts me at 7:00 every morning, and if I'm not in the gym, I have to send you, I don't know, $10, $100, whatever it was. So it's like, it made it just uncomfortable enough where you would never skip out on it. So that would be varied based on the individual, but it got him in the gym. So I think there's a lot of interesting things you could do. Ideally, like I would custody it and return it to people once they finish, because it's not about even making the money for me. It's about like getting somebody to do it.
The $1 is irrelevant.
Yeah. I think that made a big difference. And then to finish the thought, the archive came from somebody who took the Permissionless Apprentice course. There's a couple of examples in there of people that have built things. And here it is. For those listening, it's basically a database of all the visualized value content that's searchable, indexed, tagged. You can sort it by keyword, by theme, by person, like all of these different things.
Is this on your website, or did they mocked up an entire website?
So they built it on a thing called Softer, and there's a Airtable integration. So you do you put all the stuff in Airtable, and then this platform called Softer reads the Airtable, and then you can toggle all of the filters and all that stuff. This has been something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, but it's like the thing that you never do for yourself because you just like, it's laborious to go back through stuff that you've, go 2 years into the past and categorize stuff. I think there's probably a mental model for why people don't do that as well, Trung. So he made it, emailed me, and then, we just did a couple of tweaks, put the domain in, tweeted it out. Someone found it, went on Product Hunt. And yeah, there's like, I don't know, 5,000-6,000 people visiting it a day right now, which is cool.
That's amazing.
And are you driving anything towards your existing sites, or you don't even care? You're like,
I think this is like a much longer term thing where, this is a discussion that we haven't had in this podcast, but I've been around like all of these NFT projects and like the physics of memes and all of those ideas, like starting to think about ways to get your stuff out there in front of people and recirculating is really a problem that people in this game need to solve if they want to have extended relevance, right? And I think a lot of the times we play like the opposite game where we try and gate it and keep it close to us and like don't take any of my stuff. I don't want to give it away. But this is definitely like the opposite of that strategy. It's just like, if you like it, take it. I would love it if you gave me attribution. That would be the right thing to do, but it's not going to happen in every scenario. But the thought being like the propagation of it, if you get it out 100, 1,000 times bigger, that 5% that comes back to you increases with the overall spread of the ideas, right? It's more of a positive sum mentality.
How does this fit into building versus betting, by the way? Let's pull up the graphic.
Yeah, maybe we should
here it is. Here's the graphic.
Share it again, yeah. For people who didn't see that episode.
Yeah. So Jack made this graphic.
Do you want to just do a 30-second on like what it means, just for people who might not have seen that?
Sure. So the graph is two really simple graphs. The one on the left has like a flat horizontal axis until about 75% of the way across, and then you get this exponential rise for the last quarter of the graph. And then the right-hand side, the graph that represents betting, is just way more frenetic, right? One day you're at 10%, the next day you're at 100, then you're down 50, and then so on and so forth. And you're staring at the chart and wondering what coin you need to liquidate and buy into and project and stock and all of this stuff. And Bilal, actually, when I first met Bilal and we first talked about, I think about everything, this came up in our first ever discussion too, when we talked about like how to evaluate like crypto projects versus like businesses that you're building. And I think we mentioned this on the last couple of podcasts, like the last year of like complete, like whacked out market activity has kind of, it's a magnetic force that you see everybody gravitate towards. And Visualized Values had a community of a couple thousand people, and you really felt that within the community itself. And obviously there were communities that popped up exclusively around NFTs, crypto, the things that were getting all of this attention over the last year or so. And not to say that there's no function for that or no like value in that at all. It's just they're much more correlated with the volume of activity in the market than something that you build from scratch yourself that isn't necessarily tied to the motions of the market. And everything is interconnected to some degree, but I think the ability to kind of wear blinders at the right time, like your advantage emerges once everybody else realized they just wasted the last 6 months, 12 months, whatever it was, and you were just building stuff throughout. So I think everybody has experienced this phenomenon in varying degrees of scale. We're just like the environment you have to resist is very, very persuasive and incredibly well engineered. And there's like a real community element to markets now, right? Like you even see it on probably the Twitter feed of most of the people that listen to this. Like you feel like you're going through this stuff with everybody on the feed, and it's easy to just be either be an observer or just be caught in that conversation versus like tuned out and building stuff that, can reverse that market condition either locally for you or for more people. So, it feels like a phenomenon where, and this is not a new thing, where people basically feel like you can make more money faster doing something else. And that's just incentives that exist all the way down and across all markets, right? Like capital moves in the direction where it multiplies the fastest. And then when things go bust, it all kind of swings back the other way. So yeah, that's it at a like a philosophical level, I guess. And then it felt, I think we talked about this, it felt like people weren't paying attention to other stuff for a long time. And because Visualize Value specifically is it's internet native as it gets, right? The only channel to communicate with people is the internet. So you have to pay attention to that culture too. So it is a delicate balance. I'm not saying like go and live in a hole and, build away.
Or are you?
No, I'm definitely not.
5 beats a day? Was it 3 beats a day?
5 beats a day for 3 summers, I think.
You know what? Actually, I do agree with that idea once you have sold a beat.
Okay.
Okay, wait. Let's go into that more. That's
let's double click on that.
Yeah, good.
So the idea.
And wait, cool. And again, for people who don't know the Kanye lyric, right? And we didn't end up talking about this on the pod, but the Kanye documentary was also incredible, where he talked about this in more detail.
Let's pull up this image.
Go on.
I know that a lot of us, I know Bilal's seen it. This is just an iconic image, right? The one of him, young Kanye in the studio. I love these, man. I found another one. Here he is.
Class.
Yeah, just
so good.
In his basement. I don't know where he is, man, but it ain't a fancy studio.
No.
It's clearly like a made-up bedroom. Everybody had this leather computer chair, right? Your old man computer chair. Yeah, so for the listeners,
Trump be making a mess on that, man.
Deep swing in the back. Yeah.
So for the listeners, it's just an old image of Kanye way before he blew up big time. And it's just, he's got all the studio equipment. And it looks like probably in his room. And the famous rap he had was 5 beats a day for 3 summer, which is the building part of the building versus betting that Jack talks. Jack, talk us through that. What do you feel when you see that?
Well, I think like what I said about like figuring out if people want the beats you're making to continue the metaphor is obviously an important part of the process, right?
Okay.
If your goal or not even your goal, if you need to make money off the thing, right? Which in some cases, if you're just doing it, like you just love doing it and you make your money elsewhere and you get joy from making music, go by all means, lock yourself in the basement and make music. But I think the other side of that phenomenon is like, follow this thing that is just like, that you're interested in to the ends of the earth without getting any feedback from the market at any point. I think a lot of the times I've seen it happen. It leads to like frustration and burnout. And, there is this, I think it's an Andreessen quote that said, creativity is a collaboration between the artist and the audience, which I think is a very eloquent way to surmise the idea that there is feedback required with which to like dial in your product. It's just...
Well, let me actually throw this to, because I know, Bilal, you did Creator Lab. You went through a phase, you still do Creator Lab, which is your individual podcast interviews. How many things did you do before Creator Lab that got you to, because I know every creator, there's always things in the background, right? So what, for you, what was it?
It's a good question. I guess it depends what you count as created, because sometimes, like Jack was saying, some stuff is just straight up hobbies. And you, like, for example, I've written forever, like since I was a kid, but I didn't put it out for a long time. And then when I did,
writing? What did you write?
Man, I did like literally fiction stuff. I literally did like spoken word poetry. Like I did everything. Yeah.
We
might need to do a single episode.
No, I mean, it's a little different era of mine, but like that actually, to be straight up with you, that was actually pre-Creator Lab in New York. So I would go like 5 days a week. I would go and perform it.
Oh,
it was mad. Yeah, it was quite mad.
So there's a YouTube video somewhere of Bilal hitting a cipher in Brooklyn, just rolling into the Brooklyn. All right, Bilal.
Yeah, it was. No, the thing is, just to give an example of that, it started with me just liking the art form, right? So I like hip hop. I told you I like Nas, lyricist, rapper. I came to New York I came as a kid as well, but I remember coming in 2012 and someone took me to this place called Neo Rican Poets Cafe in East Village, sick place. And I remember being like, what the hell is this? And then I realized I had seen it on like Def, it was like Def Comedy Jam, and then there was Def Poetry Jam. It was like the same people. So Kanye went on it, Common, all these people. So it's basically like lyricism, but like with no beat, right? So it was sick. And I went there and I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like the people, it's kind of like a performance. It's not just writing, but I just used to go once in a while. And then like a lot of these things, I'm like, oh, why not just try it out? And then it just kind of started. And then I was like, oh, why not just go on stage? Let me just sign up. And then I'd go and try it out. And then, I'm like, I get very into things. So I just went all in until I started like competing in it, like it was ridiculous.
Class. Yo, you were competing in poetry?
Well, but you're kind of doing it like you're doing an open mic, and then if you win, which I did, then you go and compete with the professionals, basically, which is quite cool.
Yeah, bro. This is
I've
pretty
done it for a long time,
man.
But just to answer your question, that I would say is the closest I came to like creating stuff just before Creator Lab. And again, without going into the full story, I was not in the best place, and it was one of those things where I needed a channel outside of work. I couldn't leave my job. I didn't have a green card, so I started going to those things, and it was a complete different identity basically. And you'd go there, and no one's asking you about your job, no one's talking about money. They're just
pseudonymous economy, people.
Exactly.
Go listen, listeners. If you haven't, go listen to the Bored Elon Musk episode. That's cool. 1.7 million followers, Bored Elon. He's talking exactly about this. Work life versus personal life.
Yeah, but to bring it back to what Jack said real quickly is that sometimes it should just stay as that. If I was trying to like sell it, I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much.
Sure.
But I needed to basically push myself into something that felt quite scary. And then the next day I go into work and everything's easy, right? Because the night before you got like 100 people looking at you, and it's kind of a weird feeling. So then Creator Lab started, and then that kind of helped me move in a new direction. So.
Well, this is very germane to. Sorry, Jack. I just want to say something quickly. It's like the effort that Bilal put into Creator Lab, though, is like, I mean, me and Jack talk ad nauseum about this. If there is no Bilal, there is no investment advice podcast.
That's facts.
Like we do zero backend, like less than zero backend. Bilal had all these chops of, for the listeners and viewers that don't know, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in podcasting that isn't just showing up and talking. That's what me and Jack do. Bilal does the other 70% of the work, right? And you learn all that from going to the Creator Lab. I think the one lesson I will say is like, it kind of answers a chef's question is, what have you learned? It's just, if you're building like Jack's graph, all those skills they end up coming to bear. And I think we probably covered this. I covered this with Coach Nick and Coach Colin, how they started their YouTube careers. They all had previous careers and interests that all coalesced around basketball YouTube. But man, Bilal,
there's a great Steve Jobs quote, boys. You can't collect the dots looking forward. You got to connect them looking back.
Yeah, completely.
From the Stanford,
that's one of the best. I know it's like kind of cliche by now, but it's such an incredible speech like that.
Very true.
Oh, it's amazing.
Like where he talks about. Go on.
Sorry, I was gonna say you got to talk about Arsenal and bling bling.
Arsenal blog.
That's true.
Bling, yeah.
Yeah. So and the summary is like I guess I've always created little things on the side. And even just a lot of them start as like fun projects, and then sometimes they become more. But yeah, but I've kind of learned to not turn it into a job essentially. Like if you start it as a business, then great, treat it like a business. But Creator Lab is still, I make money from Creator Lab, but not like, I'm not like balling out from it. It's just enough to pay for stuff and have a little bit for the weekend money on the side. But kind of my answer to this question from Chief was, like, you kind of need to know why you're doing it. And because often, especially people like us, the ego takes over or the number part takes over. Like, as you guys know, I'm like very numbers driven as well, but I've also got that creative part. So the numbers part naturally comes into play. It's like, all right, how many downloads did we get this week versus last month? And I've got a chart set up and all, because I like looking at numbers. It's how I like digest the world to a certain extent, but I know that it's very limited in what it can tell you. It just can give you a direction, but there's a lot more to it. So, but when you wanted to see a number grow, that is where it can sometimes become something you didn't want it to become.
Yeah.
So that's the same with Create Lab. The primary reason I do that is to literally meet people like you guys, have amazing conversations, because that like gives me energy. And yeah, if people learn from it, that's amazing. If people pay me to read a sponsorship ad for 30 seconds, I'll happy to do it as well. So that's kind of my answer to it as well. Is like, you have to really be focused on why and keep nudging yourself back, because otherwise you can go off the rails. But yeah, so what about you guys, man? I know we've got like probably 10 minutes before Jack needs to jump. So
I'll add something to Jack's point about the creativities between, you know, the interplay between audience and the creator. And we've touched on it. We haven't done a full deep dive, but like, for example, when I sold the movie script 10 years ago to Fox, this is the perfect example of what Jack's saying. So I've also always been very creative in terms of side projects. I had like a blog in university, which was like campus. I was like campus famous for writing a blog. It was just about partying. I probably should have just kept doing it.
Someone needs to find this, man.
Yeah, let's find it.
It was called Blacking Like My Daddy, because I used to black out a lot in university. And then looking back, I'm like, ooh, blacking out is not cool. Like this, like it was like legitimately, people at the club would call me like, oh, dude, I love your blog, man, and like, oh, it like speaks to me.
Man, that's so funny.
I'm like, dude, like looking back, it's so embarrassing. Like those are the things you're glamorizing. But the whole point being, always done these side projects, these creative things. Thought I was going to be a screenwriter 10 years ago. But to Jack's point about the interplay of audience, there was no audience. I wrote this screenplay over a year with 2 other co-writers. We got feedback from a Hollywood, my friend who's a Hollywood screenwriter. But so in the end, it's 4 people that gave us feedback. And asking somebody to read a script, I don't know if you guys ever read a full movie script. It's a full sit down.
Yeah.
So,
and the format's kind of different, right? Like, it's not like reading a book. Different.
Yeah. So like for the listeners, I'll break it down. This top level stuff is like a script. A comedy is about 90 pages, and each page represents about a minute. So 90-minute movie is about 90 pages. A drama is closer to 100 120, so about 2-hour movie. A minute a page is kind of like the heuristic, the rule of thumb. But if you're asking somebody for feedback, imagine now, like, you guys will send me a meme, and I won't even get to looking at the meme until like a week later. Imagine I'm sending you a PDF, 100 pages, being like, hey, man, could you shoot me some notes? And then you know what you're actually doing, right? You're going to flip to the middle of the PDF, like pull out a quote and like make it look like you actually read the thing. It's like, oh, I love this thing on page 60, right? But to Jack's point about the interplay, there's no interplay. So in the last 18 months, when I've been a lot more active on Twitter, obviously the feedback, as Jack also knows on Twitter, is insane.
It's instant too, and you can basically
instant. And that's why we're all addicted to it. We talk about it. It is a dopamine machine, but there is a middle ground between writing a script for a year and a half, having 5 people give you feedback, and then a single decision maker, which is the studio. So they ended up making a binary decision. They said, yes, we will option it, but then nothing else happened, right? Versus, what is my decision making every morning with Twitter? It's literally, what time am I going to send this tweet? Because as soon as it goes and it hits, I'm not going to be able to attend to my kids. So maybe I should do it at 9 or 9:30 when my wife's up, right? So yeah, I would just say that's it. And then the last thing I'll say for Chef, and I think I've mentioned it.
Sorry, it's Chief. Sorry, there's also another guy, Chef, who's a legend too. But yeah,
shout out Chief and Chef.
Yeah, both Chef 2 legends in the Telegram, man. Yeah.
The one thing I will say, and I'd love you guys to opine on this, is if you choose to do what we're doing, and even if you're selling, if you're selling physical goods or digital goods like Jack, or you're a creative like we are doing, audio, video, text, whatever, no matter where you are in the creator journey, you always have anxiety, right? It's like when you start, you're worried that nobody is watching you or nobody will give you a response, like when I wrote my script. And then when you have 300, 400,000 followers or 100,000 followers on Twitter, you're worried that you will offend people or people won't like what you're doing, but they will see it. So there's anxiety no matter what, right? It's just like, you just have to be able to exist and deal with it. And it's not for everyone. That's the main thing. A lot of people do not like that. And I think being able to do that is such a huge advantage in the creator economy. And it's just not for everyone, which I totally understand.
Yeah, completely.
Well, what do you guys talk about the anxiety part, man? I'd love for you guys to talk about that.
I think it takes a long time to get through it. But I think you can arrive at a point where you are pruning your distribution at a certain point in time, right? Like and to be very clear, like, I don't think immunity from this is I'm not necessarily going to say impossible. It's very hard to achieve, like, not having a reaction when you read someone misinterpret something, especially if it like seems to have like deeply offended them or whatever it might be, the emotional reaction. But at the same time, I sent an email about, here's a very real example of this. I sent an email about that thing, the permissionless project we talked about, archivve, yesterday, right? So 40,000 people on the Visualize Value email list. I was like, oh, people, if they're subscribed to the email list, I'll probably like this, right? This is a free resource that is basically giving them access to the thing that made them interested in the business in the first place. You send it out, you see like, I don't know, 400 people unsubscribe from the email list after sending that.
Was it like, is that abnormal for a send for you?
I don't know. I don't really pay attention. But like when I looked at that, I was like, wow, that's a great reminder that just at some points in time, like this is not what someone wants to read for whatever reason, right? Like maybe they don't want to be reminded of something, or maybe like they're past this thing, or maybe they're into something else, or that maybe they don't want to read that many emails a day. Like something like that, where I feel like I put something out that was purely like a free resource. It's like, this is this thing that I believe in. It's free for you to use if you want it. That kind of took, and this has happened a bunch of times, but this is like one of the biggest realizations I've had across the board, is just like, if that is going to get people to opt out, then you can't get upset about that, right? It's like, that is part of the process. And the next time you send the email, the people who are still opted in are sending you the opposite signal. So I think like the whole number game and optimizing just for that is really it actually leads you in the wrong direction some ways, you know, because you try and walk the line, and you just like, especially if you have something, right? Especially if you like, you're onto something and you start diluting it because you want to grow, you want to grow from a vanity perspective. Like the thing that got you there is not the thing that you keep doing, because this is an offensive thing. I'm going to repeat it anyway. It says the more followers you have, the dumber they are.
Just math. You're saying just math.
That's just facts, right? That's just that's just average, the law of large numbers. So you cannot escape that phenomenon. For people listening, you can see
I'm just
Trung's
loving the love,
eyes
because
right
Trung's been on a journey in the last year and a half. So,
but that's just how it works, right? So I think coming to terms with some of those like realisms is also a way to deal with a lot of this stuff. And if you're not enjoying what you're doing, just pack it in. That's another another good one.
But that, Jack, just to add one thing really quickly to what you just said about like the pruning part, like where people unsubscribe or whatever, especially like as you do it for a long period of time, you change, your own interest change, you kind of keep jigging in a certain direction. And I've had that even just with Creator Lab several times, right? Like before, when I was at Google, to going to charity water, to leaving full time, those are three very distinct versions of myself. And even like last year, having interest in crypto, there's plenty of people who didn't want to hear about that stuff. That's why we started a whole different podcast. But there's a certain element of just accepting, like, I'm going to evolve. And when someone doesn't find it interesting anymore, that's completely understandable. Like, you can't please everyone, and when you try to please everyone, you're normally pleasing no one. So the more specific you become in those ways, it also depends, right? Like if Trung's writing threads about broad business stuff, that's a different approach to doing it versus like for me, interviews, or for you with your visuals and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Boys, I got to jump, but that was great.
Yeah. Jack needs to leave. Trung, if you've got a few more minutes, we can just stay on if that's all right. But
yeah, absolutely, man.
Jack, thanks for your insight and congrats on that, mate. That is really cool. People should go check it out. Is it archive with 2 V's? .visualizevalue.com. I'll search for it. We'll put it in the show notes. All right, mate. Speak to you later. Bye. All right, Trung, just to wrap that piece up, what else did we... There was just one other part of the question he asked, which I think we can just address, which he said the difference between being employee and entrepreneurship. Let me read specifically what he said here. Actually, do you know what? That's kind of the gist of it, so I can't see exactly what he said. But... and he said that, if I remember correctly, he said something along the lines of Trung has memed about this, about, CEO of a company like Apple being an employee, and that's no way to get rich.
That was taking a piss, yeah.
Of course, yeah. So I guess that is actually quite an interesting point, because I think the New York Times article we talked about, which he was referring to in Telegram chat, was us going on to the fact that most people who earn a certain amount of money are normally in the entrepreneurial route, or at least have equity in a business, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean you can't do it the other way. Like, it also depends on what you count as, again, successful is like a very broad term. But even financially successful, you can become a millionaire by being an employee for people. Totally. You just need to get stock, basically, and you need to invest in stuff that grows beyond you, obviously. So is there anything else more on that idea that is worth us jumping into a bit?
I think it's just a personal question about you brought it up. You worked at Google. You had to stick with them for immigration purposes. That sucks, right? It's like if you have to, and I was the same. I was working in the United States on a TN visa, which is a NAFTA visa, and I couldn't leave my company and stay living in the United States with my wife and my kid. It's actually one of the reasons we left. That actually really brings home a number of elements. The idea of working for somebody, but like really stuck with somebody because of like legal purposes.
Yeah, you don't have the choice.
But then, I mean, for us, we're lucky, right? We're working for big tech startups and like funded. It's like some people are stuck working for places they don't want because they have to work 3 or 4 jobs, right? There's that
completely, yeah, 100%.
So I think my only thought on that question, the larger thought was like between the two, which is like working for yourself, which is essentially what I'm doing now and I've done in the past. There's benefits to both sides. The security of having that paycheck mentally, it's like Taleb says, right? It's like heroin and sugar as the biggest addiction, and breaking that and realizing that you can make just as much or more and control your life is it's worth the trade-off. But it's like I talk about anxiety. There's no guarantee that people can break through that, right? And then you have you have relationships to deal with, like a lot of me being like, oh, I want to be a solo creator. Like that wasn't going to fly with my wife 5 years ago, right? Like if I had 0 audience, it's like, that's just not going to happen. There's like a lot of things that are obstacles to that, but I'm happy personally that I'm essentially working for myself. Yeah,
no, that's a great point. And I would also add, for me, when I did that for the first time, like it was about 3 years ago, I think it was January. So yeah, more than 3 years ago now. That first quarter, bro, was so like, it was January to like March or April. I didn't earn any money pretty much. And I didn't really have a full plan. I was like, oh, I'm just going to try it out. And I had saved that money, right? But after a few months of that number going down every month, you're still spending, wherever I'm living in New York. It's like minimum 4 or 5 grand, right? I'm spending a month, right? And that's fine if you're earning a proper salary like I was. But when you go down to 0, and it starts hitting you, even if you've planned it out, it's kind of like the bear market right now. We did a whole episode on what you do in the bear market, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to lock it up. But doing it is very different, right? So the emotions of it all. And then what I realized, and I don't know if someone's listening to this who's going through it where they're thinking to make a jump, it's not for everyone. Like, it's really, you have to value the upside, which is the complete freedom, the ability to grow beyond yourself, exponential growth. Like, you have, and like, creating your own schedule, those sort of things that I really value. For a lot of people, that is not enough of a trade-off. They don't care enough about that to warrant not having the security. And obviously, the financial part is the biggest part. Like, you need to be in a position where you can pay for the stuff you need to pay for.
Well, the one thing I will say, the financial part is huge. The one almost equally for me was like, I hated when I was working at a corporate how I knew I had to mute myself in public or online.
That's a good one.
I knew I couldn't say certain things and represent myself online. I hated that. Obviously, I hate that, right?
Yeah, of course.
And it's just like, and that's a world that I will never go back to. Like, I need, not to say that I can just say anything and like just have any opinion and expect the entire world to love it, but just like not self-censoring based on like even like pretty benign stuff, right? Like a lot of these jokes and memes I make now, like I probably couldn't have done it when I was working for like S&P Global.
Yeah, definitely not.
Or like these banks I was working for, right?
Completely. Yeah, man. No, I think that's a big thing that people, again, it's not a right or wrong answer, but I think the way I always think about it is like, I literally write out the things I want right now, and I have to create like a priority list. Like, like when I went to Charity War, I needed a certain amount of money, but it was primarily growth, personal growth, and then I wanted to do like some good at that particular stage. I was a bit younger, a bit more, what's the word?
Wide-eyed.
Yeah, exactly, which was great, and it was at the time really great. But after doing it for a couple of years, you change again. And then the last thing I was just going to say on the money side is, especially when you go down to a plan where you have basically zero for a while, for me anyway, I became quite defensive. So you start like scrambling for stuff, and that, like someone like me, doesn't work well like that. I need to feel like very proactive and like have it under control and like attack. You know what I mean? So when I'm like, oh my God, I need to like scramble for money or figure out, do stuff I don't really want to do, that I'm not working in my best self.
In those conditions.
Yeah, exactly. I can do it, I can handle it, but it's like not, like I'm not doing my best work. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's a good way to sum it up. Anything else, Trung, before we let people get going on this? I think we covered it pretty extensively.
That was, I know that we got great questions, but We'll do more because it's fun, man. It's like getting to hear Jack and like, man, I didn't even know you did poetry, so we gotta. No, not anymore.
That was a long time ago, but yeah. All right. Well, if you enjoyed this, let us know what you think on YouTube below. Let us know if you enjoyed that. And as always, we appreciate you guys being there. Make sure you're subscribed on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, everywhere else. Keep telling your friends, and we will see you next week on the next one. Bye bye.